2019. Wow. A new year is here. Why don't we turn to our neighbors and tell them Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Now let's turn to someone else and say Blessed New Year. Blessed New Year. It's a blessed New Year. Blessed New Year. Okay. So this year, 2019, marks many special occasions. It's a very special year. Every year is special, but this year is very special. I found out it's the 100th anniversary of March 1st, 1919, the 3.1운동, right? Such an important year in Korean history. It's a central part of the Korean independence movement. It's been 39 years since Myungsung Church was founded. 39 years. Can you believe that? We're getting to 40. We're getting to 40, right? 39 years. But this is the best year of your life. It's the last year of your 30s, right? So it's the last year of the 30s of Myungsung Church. And, you know, Myungsung Church is a church that's a leader, not just in Gangdong-Gu, not just in Seoul, not just in Korea, but in the entire world. I think, amen, we need to understand that Myungsung Church is a global church leader.
Amen.
You know, when people come and visit, they're not just coming to see our fancy building or to see our, you know, great choir and things like that. They're coming because they view us as one of those church leaders. And it truly is an honor, a privilege to be a part of this work that God is doing. Not our work, but that God is doing. Amen?
Amen.
And it's the 20th year since our EWS was established, our English worship service. I wasn't here 20 years ago, but it's been 20 years. Can you believe that? And it was established by the vision of our senior pastor emeritus who retired. And all of you are its beautiful members. Some of us here, sitting in this place, were here 20 years ago, if you can believe that. They were here 20 years ago on the very first Sunday that the EWS started. Some of us got here just, you know, a little while ago, not that long ago. But now we're here all together as one church family. And again, it's all for God's glory. It's all for God's glory. It's great to be here and to be able to be a part of God's kingdom, the great thing that God is doing. And so when we look forward to a new year, we talk about this new year. And every time a new year rolls around, people, they start making resolutions. They start thinking to themselves, what can I do in this new year? A new year. And as they say it in America, new year, new me. It's almost a joke at this point. New year, new me. It's the trending hashtag every January, new year, new me. Hashtag new year, new me. And, you know, of course the gym memberships, they always go up in January. They always go up. The treadmills suddenly become very, very crowded. You know, people that you never saw before. But we see so often by the time February comes, all those people are gone. And the same people that were there in December are still there in February. But all those January people, they're gone. The crowds are gone. It's the same people. You know, the desire for something new can come on so strongly, doesn't it? It comes on so strongly at the end of one year and the beginning of another. It comes on so strongly, but it fades so quickly. Because what many people don't realize is that the emotions and the passion of a holiday season, just a season, is not enough to sustain them throughout a whole year, let alone their whole lives. And so people begin falling away. But Paul wants to introduce us to a new way of thinking. He says, why don't you renew your minds and let this transform your life? But first, before you even think about that, before we think about anything new, he says, first, we must offer our bodies, ourselves, everything that we have, from head to toe. We must offer ourselves as living sacrifices in view of God's mercy. And that qualifier is so important, in view of God's mercy. We have to consider how drastically different this is to the traditional wisdom of that time that said, in other false religions and idol worship, the paradigm, the way that you worshipped, sacrifice was something that you brought and you killed. You killed the sacrifice, poured out its blood, or you burned it up. And you did this, the worshiper killed the sacrifice at the altar so that they could gain mercy. That was the system that was in place for all religions. But for the early followers of the way of Christ, Christianity, God gave mercy first. And he asked that people would bring sacrifice afterwards in view of that mercy. And not a dead sacrifice, not a sacrifice that had to be killed at the altar, but he says a living sacrifice, a sacrifice that is alive and well. God gave mercy first and asked us to respond with sacrifice. In view of God's mercy, offer your bodies as living sacrifices. Because the final and ultimate sacrifice had already been made. It was already made. Jesus took care of that. Our high priest made that sacrifice for us. That's not something that we had to bring. So this sacrifice that we bring is not a sacrifice of death. It is a sacrifice of life, of living. Jesus tells us, I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. See, false idols, they demand that their followers live for them, but actually they only provide death. But Jesus asks us to die for him, that we might live for him. The German pastor, the theologian, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, he wrote in his book, The Cost of Discipleship, that the cross is not the terrible end to an otherwise God-fearing and happy life. The cross is not the end. But it meets us at the beginning of our communion with Christ, at the beginning. When Christ calls a man, he bids him come and die. And Bonhoeffer, he wrote this as the Nazis were gaining power in Germany. That was the context that he was writing in. The Nazis were rising in power. He was eventually imprisoned. He was put into prison. He was executed. They killed him because he lived out his faith. He lived out his faith. And he stood against Hitler. He stood as one of the Christian leaders that were opposed to Hitler at the time because he wanted to live for Christ. And a lot of people often ask, where were the Christians in Nazi Germany? And they often see Christians as being complicit in the rise of Hitler and Nazi Germany. But the Christians were right there. The Christians were there. Many of them stood as part of the resistance. They risked everything that they had, even their very lives, to help and defend and save the people that were targeted by the Nazis, the Jews, the Slavs, the minorities, the disabled. And in the end, many of these Christians died right alongside those people that they tried to protect. Because as Psalm 82 tells us, defend the weak and fatherless, uphold the cause of the poor and the oppressed, rescue the weak and needy, deliver them from the hand of the wicked. Those were the words that Bonhoeffer lived by. He lived his life as a living sacrifice for Christ, holy and pleasing to God. This was his spiritual act of worship, his true and proper worship. Do not conform to this world. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. This is so important, and I want to focus in on this for a little bit, because do not conform to this world. We are created in God's image. We often say that. We are created in God's image. In God's image we were created. We are made in his shape. What that means is that we cannot fit into the shape of this world because we do not belong to it. We do not belong to this world. We cannot fit into this world's shapes. But we try so hard. We try to conform. We try to fit into the shape that the world asks us to be, but it does not fit us. One of my recent challenges after moving to Korea is trying to find new dress shoes. And I already have enough sneakers, although I want more. But dress shoes, I only have a couple pairs. So I was thinking about replacing one. So I decided I would start looking a little early. But I couldn't find one that fit. And I don't know, maybe I'm just looking in the wrong stores. I haven't gone to that many. But the stores that I was going to, I couldn't find my size. And I found out my size in Korea is 300. And they have the same reaction when I tell them 300. Like, 300. But if I go to a store and I can't find a shoe that fits me, would it make sense for me to tell the salesperson, oh, no problem, I'll take the 260. I'll take the 260 and I'll wear it. I'll make it work. I'm going to make it fit. That wouldn't make any sense. And we would think that's crazy. Never in a million years would that shoe fit on my foot. I would be like the ugly sister from Cinderella, right? Trying to shove my foot. It's not going to fit. It would never fit, no matter how hard I try. When we see a baby, right? When we see a baby playing with its toys, we see it trying to shove the little, the little box with the shapes. It takes the square and tries to shove it into the triangle. It takes the star and it tries to shove it into the circle. And it doesn't fit. And we look at that and we're like, that's never going to fit. It seems like such foolishness. And we understand the baby doesn't know. The baby doesn't understand yet. But many of us, even full-grown adults, we try to fit ourselves into shapes that do not fit us. We do not fit into this world. We can try to pretend for a little while. We can try to mold into that shape. We can try to pretend, but eventually we will be found out because we are God-shaped people.
Amen.
So we cannot fit into this world.
Amen.
So Paul says, do not conform. Do not twist yourself. Do not contort yourself trying to fit into this world, trying to shape yourself into what this world asks you to be, because it will not work. It is exhausting. It is pointless. Instead, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And transformed, I think, is an important word here. Transformed. The Greek word is metamorphuste. And for anyone who went to public school in the United States, I don't know if it's the same here, but in the United States, one of the things that every student learns, of course we learn multiplication and all that, but one of the things that every student learns is about metamorphosis. Metamorphosis. When a caterpillar becomes a beautiful butterfly. Metamorphosis. And it's funny because no matter what school you went to, no matter what state, no matter whether you're rich or poor, if you lived in the city or on a farm, everyone learns this lesson. Everyone learns this lesson. And usually the class has like a caterpillar, a pet caterpillar. You might give it a name. And you would watch this caterpillar in a cage go from an egg to the caterpillar to a cocoon, and I still remember we called it a chrysalis. A chrysalis. What in Korean is pondegi, right? And then we would watch it transform. Finally, it would emerge from this cocoon as an adult butterfly, elegant and beautiful. It would flap its wings, and we would put little like cotton balls with sugar water inside. Metamorphosis. I found out yesterday for the first time in Korean, metamorphosis is called pyeontae. I don't know how that happened, but I think metamorphosis is better, right? Metamorphosis. It's translated as transform. Metamorphuste is translated transform in the English. And in Korean, in the Korean Bible, it is pyeonho, right? They didn't put pyeontae there. Pyeonho. But think about the butterfly, the metamorphosis that happens, the transformation. It's not changing to a different species. It's not becoming a different animal. The caterpillar is the butterfly, and the butterfly is the caterpillar, and the caterpillar is the cocoon. They're all the same. It's one animal. It's the same being, the same identity. Nothing has changed. So what we might call a transformation, what we might call a metamorphosis, is actually a revelation. Not a transformation, but a revelation. It is the revealing of the true nature, the true character of what was always there, what had always been there. It is through the metamorphosis that the butterfly's true identity is finally shown. And we see this same word, the same Greek word, metamorphuste. The root word is metamorpho. And the same word is used in only 2 other places in the New Testament. Only 2 other places. The first in 2 Corinthians chapter 3, Paul says we are being transformed into God's image. We are being metamorphosized into God's image. And if we read it again with this new understanding, we can say that not only are we being transformed into God's image, but that God's image is being revealed in us. Because as Genesis tells us, we are made in God's image. What had already been there all along, our true identity, is being revealed. And the second use of this word shows us, I think, even more clearly, because in Matthew chapter 17, Jesus goes up on the mountain with Peter, James, and John, his most trusted disciples. And what happens on that mountain? It says that he was transfigured. He was transformed before them. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became as white as the light. So we have to ask ourselves, is Jesus being transformed into something new? Is Jesus being transformed into something that he was not before? Is his identity changing? It was Jesus' true self being revealed. His true identity was being shown, even if just for a moment, to his disciples. His disciples who never understood, who never really got it, who always missed the point. He was showing them, just for a moment, who he really was, his true self. So what we can see is that metamorphosis, this being transformed, is not necessarily about becoming something new. It's not about becoming something new. It's not about becoming something different than what you were. It's not about change, per se. It's about the true self finally being revealed. Last week we talked about how it can be possible to look back in the wrong way. We looked at Lot's wife, how you can look back in the wrong way, in a way that does not please God. Remember, we are called to repent, but not regret. Very clear distinction. And what today's reading is telling us, that it can also be possible to look forward in the wrong way as well, in a way that does not please God, in a way that does not honor God. When we look to the new year and we think only about how we can change ourselves, how we have to be something different, maybe we overlook the fact of today's scripture reading. Transformation is actually a revelation. True identity, our true image, our true shape is being revealed. So there is no need for new year, new me. New year, new me. We don't need that. God doesn't want a new you. He wants the real you.
Amen.
That is what God wants. And he wants all of you. The work of Jesus Christ on the cross is to save us from this world that only offers fake, counterfeit versions of human nature. It's jaktung. It's fake. What this world offers us is just jaktung. It's the bags they sell on the street. They're not real. It might look a little bit real, but if you look closely, that is not the true image. Jesus offers to us the true, authentic, genuine version of who we are made to be. We are made in the image of God, in the shape of God, and our shape does not fit in this world. It can only fit into God's.
Amen.
You know, sometimes we make the mistake of thinking that everything new is good. That if it's new, it must be good. If it's new, it must be good. Actually, in the very early church, new meant heresy. Right? New was something bad. Because new meant there were too many people trying to change the Bible. So new meant heresy. New was evil. But we fall into this trap of thinking that everything new is good. If it's new, it must be good. We think that something has to change all the time. But when the novelty of January wears off, when it goes away, it fades away, we look around and we think to ourselves, I'm still doing the same thing. The same thing. The same thing I was doing all of 2018. It seems like I'm going to be doing all of 2019. What's the point? Nothing changed. And we think that something is wrong. Some of us have been sitting here in Myungsung Church and EWS for many, many, many years. Many years. And even if we haven't been here a long time, some of us have been Christians for a very long time. How can we do the same thing for so long? How can we come here every Sunday? Every Sunday. I mean, isn't it boring by now? If some of you are listening and going, yeah, you're right, then just slow down a little. But really, how many times can we hear the same sermons from the same Bible over and over and over again? Do we need something new? No. Because sometimes having the same old thing is what's best for us. This past week, our senior pastor and our pastor emeritus, they both gave us very important messages that I think sort of match together. Our senior pastor said that worship is training, 예배는 훈련. And our pastor emeritus said that worship is the dividing standard, 예배로 갈라진다. Worship is a central part of our faith. Even though it might seem repetitive to do the same thing over and over and over again, it's for our benefit. It's for our benefit. Going back to the idea of exercise. When we exercise, we do the same motions over and over and over again. We do the same exercises over and over and over again. If you go to the gym, there are only so many machines. There are only so many exercises that you can do. They're all the same. I've been to gyms in America. I've been to gyms in South America. I've been to gyms in Korea. And they're all the same. All the machines are the same. But I've never heard anyone complain and say, oh, this is the same exercise I was doing last time. Because it is through those same motions over and over again, what they call repetitions, or they call it reps for short. It is through these repetitions, even though it's the same all the time, it's through these repetitions that we gain strength, that we gain endurance, that our body becomes trained, that our body grows and becomes stronger. And even though this exercise, these same motions over and over and over again, it might cause fatigue in that moment. But in the long run, that is what gives us energy and life. For us, worship is a repetition. Worship is a repetition. The service that we're having today is the same pretty much as the service we had last week. Next week, we're going to have the same service, more or less. It's the same, but we are still blessed, and we can still grow, and we are still trained. We are disciplined. We are growing in the faith through these same things over and over. It is through worship that we can be transformed, that our true selves can be revealed. It is through repetition that worship reveals who God wants us to be, who God made us to be, our true image. So when we see God's mercy, I want to close by saying, when we see God's mercy, in view of God's mercy, we are called to give our whole lives as living sacrifices. This is how we can bring our worship before Him. To do this, we need to stop conforming. We need to stop forcing ourselves into shapes that do not fit us, into these models and molds that the world provides for us. We have to be transformed. We have to undergo this metamorphosis, meaning that the true nature of who God created us to be is revealed. So in this new year, I would pray that we do not focus on becoming a new me. Let's not focus on becoming a new me. Let us focus instead on letting God reveal the true me.